stillness before the storm. Alex sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the dying embers of the small fire he had managed to light in the chamber's hearth. The faint crackling sound did little to break the suffocating silence that hung in the air. The events of the last few hours played over and over in his mind. The catacomb, the sacrificial chamber, the growling thing that had tried to claw its way from the depths. The talisman around his neck had grown warm again, as though it too could feel the tension crackling through the room. He clutched it absent-mindedly, his fingers tracing the rough edges of the wood as he sat in the dim light. Every creak of the old castle, every whisper of wind outside made him flinch. It wasn't paranoia anymore. Something was here. He could feel it, watching him, waiting for its moment. He'd bolted his chamber door and barricaded it with the heavy writing desk, convinced that the castle's malevolence couldn't reach him here. But deep down, he knew better. The whispers, the visions, the attack in the sacrificial chamber, they had all led to this moment. The bloodstone had awakened something, and now it wanted him. The first signs. The fire in the hearth crackled weakly before sputtering and dying, as though suffocated by an unseen force. The room plunged into darkness, save for the faint glow of Alex's flashlight resting on the desk. Its beam cast long, flickering shadows across the stone walls, stretching and twisting unnaturally. Alex frowned, his heart pounding as he stood and grabbed the flashlight. The air in the room was freezing, his breath visible in thin clouds as he exhaled. He swept the beam across the chamber, searching the corners for anything out of place. "Come on," he muttered, his voice hoarse. "You're losing it." He turned back toward the bed and froze. The shadow at the far corner of the room moved. It was subtle at first, a ripple across the darkness, like ink spreading in water. But then it grew, its edges coalescing into a distinct shape, a tall, hunched figure that loomed just beyond the flashlight's reach. Alex stumbled back, his chest tightening. No! The shape shifted again, stretching upward until it filled the corner from floor to ceiling. The air in the room grew thick and heavy, vibrating faintly with a deep, resonant hum. Then two red points appeared within the darkness. Eyes. The shadow takes form. The figure stepped forward, pulling itself out of the shadows as though peeling free from the stone itself. It was humanoid, but wrong. Grotesquely elongated limbs, clawed hands that scraped against the floor, and a frame that looked as though it had been stretched beyond what the human body could endure. Its skin was a sickly pale gray, almost translucent, with dark veins twisting just beneath the surface like writhing snakes. Its head tilted unnaturally to the side, the red eyes burning like smoldering embers within the void of its face. The creature's breathing filled the room, a low, rattling sound, wet and labored, as though its lungs were rotted and hollow. It opened its mouth, revealing jagged, uneven teeth, and a sound emerged that sent Alex's blood running cold, a guttural growl that seemed to come from the depths of the earth itself. The flashlight trembled in Alex's grip. "Stay back!" he shouted, his voice shaking. The creature took another step, the stone floor groaning under its weight. Its shadow spread across the walls, crawling like living tendrils that reached for him. "Stay back!" Alex shouted again, backing toward the door. He stumbled against the desk barricading it, knocking over his notebook and the bundle holding the bloodstone's box. The talisman against his chest burned hotter now, its presence the only thing keeping him grounded as the creature advanced. The attack. Without warning, the creature lunged. It moved impossibly fast for its size, crossing the room in a single, unnatural stride. Alex barely had time to react. He threw himself to the side, crashing into the edge of the bed as the creature's claws swiped through the air where he had stood just moments before. The sound was deafening, a screech of nails against stone, like 1,000 knives scraping together. The flashlight clattered to the ground, its beam spinning wildly across the walls, casting frantic, jerking shadows. Alex scrambled onto the bed, his heart pounding in his ears. The creature turned its head slowly, its red eyes locking onto him. It let out another growl, deeper this time, hungry, desperate. Alex grabbed the flashlight and shone it directly at the figure. The beam struck its face, and for a moment the creature recoiled. Its body writhed, its form seeming to shift and blur as though it were struggling to maintain its shape. The red glow in its eyes dimmed, and it let out a shriek that made Alex's skin crawl. It doesn't like the light, Alex realized, gripping the flashlight tighter. A desperate defense. The creature retreated a step, its body writhing and flickering like a broken image. Alex didn't waste the opportunity. He grabbed the talisman around his neck and held it up, the rough wood biting into his skin as he thrust it forward. "Get back!" he shouted, his voice filled with equal parts terror and fury. "Leave me alone!" The creature let out a low snarl, the red glow in its eyes flaring back to life. It lunged again, and this time Alex wasn't fast enough. Its clawed hand struck him across the chest, sending him crashing into the wall. Pain exploded through his ribs, and for a moment the world spun. The talisman swung wildly on its cord, and the flashlight rolled across the floor, its beam landing on the creature once more. Through the haze of pain, Alex watched as the creature paused, writhing in agony under the light. Its form wavered like smoke caught in a breeze, the darkness struggling against the thin beam of illumination. He coughed, gasping for air, and forced himself onto his knees. The talisman felt hot against his chest, almost burning. The bloodstone stirs. Then Alex heard it. A low hum emanated from the bundle on the floor, the bloodstone. The cloth wrapping it began to glow faintly red, as though the stone itself were responding to the creature's presence. The creature turned its head sharply, its eyes snapping toward the bloodstone's box. It let out a guttural, triumphant sound that sent a chill racing down Alex's spine. "No," Alex muttered, realizing too late what was happening. The creature wasn't after him. It was after the bloodstone. The hum grew louder, vibrating through the floor as the glow intensified. The creature stepped toward it, its claws outstretched, drawn to the stone like a moth to a flame. Alex knew he couldn't let it touch it. If the bloodstone was as powerful as the diary had warned, the creature gaining control of it would be catastrophic. Summoning every ounce of strength he had left, Alex lunged for the box. Narrow escape. His hands closed around the bundle, just as the creature's claws slammed into the floor where it had been. Stone splintered under the force of the blow, fragments flying into the air. Alex rolled onto his back, cradling the bloodstone's box to his chest. The creature loomed over him, its face inches from his own. Its red eyes burned brighter, and Alex felt its presence pressing down on him like a physical weight. He held up the talisman, the wooden carving trembling in his grip. "Stay back!" he shouted again, thrusting the talisman toward the creature's face. The creature hissed, recoiling from the object as though it were scalding hot. Its form flickered, growing weaker, the shadows around it seeming to collapse inward. The hum from the bloodstone intensified, and the creature let out a roar of frustration as it staggered back, its body dissolving into writhing smoke. With one final shriek, the creature vanished into the darkness, leaving only the echoes of its scream ringing through the chamber. Aftermath. For a long moment, Alex lay on the cold stone floor, gasping for breath. The bloodstone's hum faded, and the red glow receded, plunging the room into darkness once more. His entire body ached, his chest burning where the creature's claws had struck him. He forced himself to sit up, the talisman still clutched tightly in his hand. It was warm, but no longer burning. The flashlight lay on its side, its beam weak but steady. Alex grabbed it and scanned the room. There was no sign of the creature, no movement, no sound. Just the silence of the castle, deep and endless. He glanced at the bundle in his lap, his breath hitching. The bloodstone was more dangerous than he could have ever imagined. It wasn't just a relic. It was a beacon, and something monstrous had answered its call. The urge to flee. Alex stumbled to his feet, his hands shaking as he stuffed the bloodstone, still wrapped tightly in its cloth, into his bag. His ribs ached where the creature's claws had struck him, and his breath came in short, sharp bursts. The air in the chamber felt heavier now, charged with the remnants of the creature's presence, as though the castle itself had been watching, waiting for him to make his next move. "I have to get out," Alex muttered, his voice trembling. He threw a glance toward the door, half expecting to see the shadowy figure looming there again. But the room remained still. It was too quiet, unnaturally so. The only sound was the faint hum of the bloodstone coming from his bag, a rhythmic vibration that seemed to resonate through his very bones. The realization struck him like ice water. He couldn't stay here, not in this cursed room, not in this cursed castle. He had to leave. Alex grabbed the flashlight and swept it across the chamber one last time, avoiding the dark corners that seemed to writhe with unseen shapes. He shoved the talisman beneath his shirt and bolted out of the door. The hallway beyond felt no safer. The shadows stretched too far, their edges liquid and alive. But he forced himself to keep moving. The castle turns against him. The grand staircase loomed ahead, its banisters worn smooth by centuries of use. Alex sprinted down the steps, his feet pounding against the stone, the sound echoing through the empty halls like a drumbeat. He didn't dare look back. The castle was alive now. He could feel it. The air vibrated faintly, the hum from the bloodstone growing louder with every step, as though it was sinking with the very walls of the castle. "Keep it together," Alex whispered, half to himself, half to the walls that seemed to close in on him. "You're almost out." The main hall appeared before him, its vast expanse cloaked in shadow. The massive wooden double doors that served as the castle's main entrance stood ahead, barely visible in the weak light filtering through the stained glass windows above. They looked so small now, so impossibly far away. But they were his only way out. Alex sprinted toward the doors, his chest burning with each breath. Come on, come on, come on. The sealed gates. He skidded to a stop before the towering double doors, his fingers fumbling at the iron handles. He gripped them tightly and pulled. Nothing. The doors didn't budge. "Come on," he shouted, planting his feet and pulling harder. The wood groaned slightly under his weight, but refused to move, as though something far heavier held it closed. He shoved his shoulder against the wood, gritting his teeth as he pushed with all his strength. Still nothing. Alex stepped back, staring at the doors in disbelief. They weren't locked. There was no latch or bolt holding them in place, but they wouldn't move. It was as if the castle itself refused to let him leave. He swallowed hard, panic rising in his chest. He turned and scanned the main hall, searching for another way out. The arched windows high above were too narrow to climb through, and the small side doors he'd passed earlier were all reinforced with heavy iron. The whispers returned, faint at first, crawling from the dark corners of the hall. Appariator tenebris. Alex backed up, his flashlight trembling in his hand. No, 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 no. Let me out. The hum from the bloodstone surged in response, louder now, vibrating against his ribs. He could feel it in the bag slung across his back, its pulse growing stronger with every passing second. The bloodstone's power. Without warning, the hum from the bloodstone reached a crescendo. Alex cried out as a wave of invisible force pulsed outward, rippling through the room like a shockwave. The stained glass windows rattled, the walls groaned, and dust rained down from the vaulted ceiling above. The force hit Alex like a hammer, sending him sprawling to the floor. His flashlight skidded across the stone, its beam flickering wildly before going dark. For a moment, Alex lay motionless, the air knocked from his lungs. The hum was still there, deeper now, reverberating through the castle's very bones. He struggled to push himself upright, his head spinning. The bloodstone pulsed again, a wave of heat spreading through his bag and into his back. It was as if the stone was alive, reaching out, spreading its influence. The whispers grew louder. Appariator tenebris, Appariator tenebris. No, Alex rasped, clutching his bag as he staggered to his feet. I won't know. The shadows in the room deepened, flowing like ink toward the walls and corners. Alex's vision swam as he turned back to the doors, his movement sluggish, like he was wading through water. Something was wrong. The bloodstone wasn't just stopping him from leaving. It was fighting back. The growing presence. From the far end of the hall, a sound emerged. It started as a low rumble, deep and guttural, vibrating through the floor like a distant growl. Alex turned, his flashlight still dead, his heart hammering in his chest. The shadows at the far end of the hall were moving, coalescing into shapes that twisted and shifted. The growl grew louder, closer, until it became a low, guttural breathing. The shadow stepped forward. It was the same figure, the gaunt, monstrous humanoid with elongated limbs and burning red eyes. It emerged from the darkness slowly, deliberately, as though savoring Alex's terror. Its claws scraped against the stone floor, the sound sharp and unnatural. Alex staggered backward, his feet slipping on the dust-covered floor. "Stay away from me," he shouted, his voice cracking. The creature tilted its head, its red eyes narrowing as it stepped closer. Its mouth opened slowly, revealing rows of jagged teeth, and a sound emerged, a horrible, raspy whisper that mirrored the voices he'd been hearing all along. "Appariator tenebris." Alex's mind reeled, opened the darkness. The words had haunted him since he first touched the bloodstone, and now, hearing them from the creature's mouth, they felt final. The thing reached for him, its clawed hand extending unnaturally, the shadows around it flowing like smoke. A last desperate effort, Alex spun and threw himself at the doors again. He pounded his fists against the wood, screaming for anyone to hear him. "Let me out," he cried, his voice hoarse and broken. "Let me go." The hum surged again, a wave of energy radiating from his bag and spreading through the room. The creature snarled, its voice a mix of rage and hunger, and the shadows twisted violently, as though trying to engulf him. Alex gripped the talisman around his neck, the wood burning hot against his skin. He didn't know if it would help, if it could do anything, but it was the only thing he had left. "Stop!" he screamed, holding the talisman out in front of him. "Leave me alone!" The creature hesitated, its red eyes narrowing as the talisman's faint warmth spread outward. For the briefest moment, the shadows seemed to recoil, as though pushed back by an invisible barrier. Alex didn't wait to see if it would hold. He grabbed the flashlight and sprinted back the way he'd come, his movements fueled by pure adrenaline. The whispers followed him, furious and deafening, echoing through the halls as he ran. The growling grew distant, but he knew it wasn't gone. It was waiting, watching, trapped. Alex collapsed against a stone column near the base of the grand staircase, gasping for breath. His body ached, his ribs screaming with pain, but he couldn't stop shaking. The bloodstone's hum had quieted to a low, faint pulse, as though it were satisfied for now. The double doors remained closed, their dark wood gleaming faintly in the weak light. The castle wouldn't let him leave. He was trapped, wiping the sweat from his brow. Alex glanced down at the talisman in his hand. The rough wood had grown cooler now, its faint glow dimming. "I can't stay here," he whispered. "I can't." But deep down, he knew the truth. The castle wouldn't let him leave, not until it was done with him. The return of Mihai. The great hall was silent now, save for Alex's labored breathing. The attempt to escape had failed, the castle itself sealing him in like a tomb. The bloodstone in his bag pulsed faintly, its low hum vibrating through his bones, as if mocking him. He pressed his back against the stone column, clutching the talisman against his chest, his mind racing. "You cannot leave." The thought turned over in his head, a cold and undeniable truth. Whatever dark power resided within the bloodstone, within the castle itself, had tethered him here. The sound of footsteps broke the silence. Slow, deliberate, their rhythm amplified by the cavernous hall. Alex's heart leapt. He turned his head sharply toward the source of the sound. Emerging from the shadows, near the grand staircase, was Mihai. The old groundskeeper's cane tapped against the stone with every step, his pale eyes fixed on Alex like a predator stalking wounded prey. "You're still here," Mihai said softly, his voice echoing through the vast room. It wasn't a question, it was a statement. Alex struggled to his feet, every muscle in his body aching. "The gates, they're sealed," he said, his voice hoarse. "I can't leave." Mihai nodded grimly, coming to a stop just a few feet away. His gnarled hands rested on his cane, his face a mask of stone. "The castle won't let you." "Why?" Alex demanded, his voice breaking. "What the hell is happening here?" Mihai's pale eyes seemed to pierce through him. It has chosen you. The Bloodstones claim. Alex stared at Mihai, the words hanging in the air like a death sentence. What do you mean it's chosen me? Chosen me for what? Mihai's mouth twisted into something between a frown and a sneer. The Bloodstone doesn't simply exist, Alex. It seeks. It chooses. From the moment you laid hands on it, it marked you as its vessel. Alex recoiled as though struck, his hand clutching the bag slung across his back. I didn't ask for this. I didn't. No one ever does. Mihai interrupted sharply, his tone colder now. But it doesn't matter. Once it chooses, it binds itself to you. It's no longer a question of leaving the castle, Alex. You can't. You belong to it now. Alex felt the weight of those words settle on him like iron chains. His mind reeled. I didn't do anything. I didn't ask to find this place, to find the Bloodstone. But you did, Mihai said, his voice softening slightly, though his expression remained grim. You dug into secrets that were meant to stay buried. You awoke it, and now it will not rest until it gets what it wants. Alex's skin prickled. What does it want? Mihai's eyes narrowed, and his voice dropped to a whisper. It wants you, bound to the curse. Alex staggered back, shaking his head violently. No, that's not true. You're lying. This is just some trick, some superstition. You think I'm lying? Mihai's voice echoed through the hall like a whip crack. Do you think this is all coincidence? He gestured around the room, the towering doors, the creeping shadows, the oppressive silence. Do you think the castle sealed itself just for fun? Alex said nothing, his chest rising and falling as panic clawed at him. Mihai took a slow step forward, his cane striking the stone like a judge's gavel. The Bloodstone binds itself to its vessel. It feeds off you, your mind, your fear, your life. It needs you to fulfill its purpose. You're as much a part of the curse now as the castle itself. Alex's voice came out a shaky whisper. You said you're a keeper. If you know so much about this, tell me how to stop it. Mihai's gaze darkened. There is no stopping it. The Bloodstone cannot be destroyed. It is older than you can imagine, older than this castle, older than us. It is a piece of something beyond this world, something that cannot be unmade. Alex's throat tightened. So I'm just supposed to accept this? That I'm cursed? That there's no way out? There's only one way out, Mihai said darkly. Death. A dangerous revelation. Alex stiffened, his heart pounding. Mihai took another step closer, his cane tapping rhythmically, as though punctuating his words. You're not the first, Alex. There have been others, men and women who stumbled too close to the truth. Scholars, adventurers, historians like you. The castle called to them too. The Bloodstone marked them, and not one of them left this place alive. Alex shook his head, his mind screaming in denial. You're lying? Mihai's eyes were cold and steady. Am I? Where do you think the Bloodstone gets its power? How do you think it feeds? Alex froze. He remembered the diary's words. The stone does not grant life. It mocks death, the sacrifices, the rituals. The Bloodstone drank life to sustain its power. It needs me to die, Alex whispered, his voice trembling. Yes, Mihai said softly. It will keep you here, weaken you, torment you, until you give it what it craves. Blood, desperation, and defiance. For a long moment, the two men stared at each other. Mihai's face was impassive, his pale eyes unreadable. Alex's mind raced, his pulse hammering in his ears. The castle, the shadows, the Bloodstone, it was all connected. But he wasn't ready to surrender. No, Alex said finally, his voice stronger than he felt. I won't let it win. There's another way. There has to be. Mihai's expression twisted into something resembling pity. You'll only drive yourself mad looking for answers. The castle doesn't lose. The Bloodstone doesn't let go. You'll realize that soon enough. Then help me, Alex said, desperation creeping into his voice. If you're really a keeper, if you've spent your life protecting this place, then help me destroy it. Mihai shook his head, his grip tightening on the cane. You don't understand. I serve the castle, Alex. The keepers always have. We are its caretakers, its guards. I'm not here to help you escape. I'm here to make sure the Bloodstone gets what it wants. The realization struck Alex like a fist. You're trying to kill me. Mihai didn't deny it. His face remained cold. It's the only way to restore balance. To quiet the stone. To keep it asleep. Alex took a step back, his hand drifting to the talisman hanging around his neck. You're insane. No, Mihai said calmly. I'm a servant of the castle. And you, Alex, are the sacrifice it demands. The chase begins. Before Alex could react, Mihai raised his cane and swung it with surprising strength. Alex ducked instinctively, the wooden cane grazing his shoulder as he stumbled backward. Stop! Alex shouted, but Mihai advanced, his movements eerily calm, his cane striking the stone floor with every step. You can't run forever, Alex. Mihai called after him. It's already chosen you. Alex turned and bolted, his bag slamming against his back as he sprinted toward the nearest hallway. The shadows in the castle seemed to shift, writhing at the edges of his vision, as though the castle itself was working against him. Behind him, Mihai's footsteps echoed through the halls, relentless and steady. You'll come back. Mihai's voice reverberated through the corridor. You can't fight it. Alex ignored him, focusing on the faint beam of his flashlight cutting through the darkness. He didn't know where he was running to. He just needed to get away. Away from Mihai. Away from the Bloodstone. Away from the whispers that clawed at the edge of his mind. I can't die here, Alex thought, gritting his teeth as he sprinted deeper into the castle. There has to be a way to destroy it. There has to be. But as the whispers grew louder and the Bloodstone pulsed in his bag, Alex knew one thing for certain. He was running out of time.